What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Winning Move podcast. This is my boy, Max Jimenez.
What up?
How do I say it? What's the word? I don't even know how to pronounce it.
El Cerrador.
And what does that mean, man?
The closer, baby. What's up?
The closer. The closer.
But it's in Spanish. And you know what's funny is I'm not big in giving myself nicknames or anything like that. That was just given to me.
From who?
Steve. Because I'll give you the story behind that is before we start. So we obviously got trained 3 years ago, right? We started Sounder training, and so Sounder training, to grasp it, the idea and the methodology and all that is real difficult. But when you take it to Spanish, it's even harder because a lot of stuff doesn't translate. So for me, it was a little bit hard, but I did it. I still was able to translate it, and that's how he became. And I would share the stories in our training, and then he was like El Cerrador. So that's how it came about.
Well, bro, let's talk about that, because like in every other culture but America, everyone's like, man, fuck this Sandler shit as the seller, right? Because they don't want to talk about their feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you get around that? Like, because generally when people like, do you have Spanish cold callers, Spanish closers? I'm just like, well, generally, like, they don't really want to negotiate with, like, they're more negotiating, not bearing their heart out and you making them cry. Like, bro, what are you doing asking me these questions?
Correct. You got to be a little bit more direct, and you got to add a little bit more aggressiveness to it. That's just the difference.
Okay.
Like, you can't, when you're talking to them, usually when you have an appointment with someone that speaks English, you can ask some basic questions like, how come you're considering selling? Like, how long has that been going on? Can you tell me more about that? So, and when you're talking to somebody, in Spanish, it's like, can't put them too much through that. It's more direct. You're still trying to get the same points across, but you gotta be like super direct and straightforward. And like, you gotta tell them, like, okay, I'll give you an example. On Monday, I was at an appointment and I already had talked to the daughter, but I hadn't met the mother yet. Uh-huh. And so basically, when I got there, the daughter hadn't showed up. I got there right at 5 minutes early. The daughter was running late. So I sat down and talked to the mother. So the mother, she spilled the beans, bro. I was like, she gave me all I needed before the daughter got there. And one of the things she said was like, well, I don't know if I want to sell this and that. She threw that at me. So I'm like, okay, I jotted that down. When the daughter got there and I said, and they wanted to start the appointment, and this is all in Spanish, mind you. I told them, like, look, before we start the appointment, I need to ask you both something. They're like, what's going on? Like, I came out here thinking that today I was going to buy a property, but I'm getting real conflicted message. I said, one saying you want to sell, the other one doesn't. I say, I'm not trying to cause problems, but usually when that happens, that the appointments don't go really well. Like, you got to be that direct.
That's a good point, though. I mean, because you don't want to waste your time.
100%. So it's more directive and more, you got to be more firm. And like I said, a little bit more, your aggressive level has to go up just a little bit with them.
Well, and talk about how the Sandler system is a disqualifying system, right? And like, you are disqualifying them at the door, being like, hey, and even if they say no, like, you know what? Yeah, it's probably not going to go well. Oh, well, like, then you can go on to the next and you can put them in a follow-up.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, I love that shit.
Yeah, no. Yeah, of course. Like, the way I look at it is, do you want to find out within the first 5 minutes whether you have an engaged prospect, whether you're going to have a prospect that's going to do business with you, or do you want to find out 45 minutes later when they say, hey, I got to think about it. Hey, you know what? I don't know if this is a good move for me. I'm not ready to make a decision today. For me personally, I want to find out within 5 minutes or less whether this is going to be somebody that I'm going to invest my time. Because my time is just important. That's the other thing too. You got one of the things that, that we're taught with this is that, when we're talking to these people and we're booking appointments, I let them know, like, look, this appointment is very important to me. I have an appointment before yours. I have an appointment after yours, and I put you in between. So I want to make sure that, just like your time is important, mine is as well. And I want to be able to spend the most quality time with you. So I'm going to be there 5 minutes early. And, I get them to commit, because taking that approach, now they're going to say, holy smokes, like, this guy's really busy. I'm not going to waste his time. You know what? Just don't come that day. Right. So it's like, so that's kind of the approach, is that the mentality is like, just like their time is important, just like their property is important, or everything else for them, it's got to be the same way as well for you running your business. You know how difficult it is, man, how to run this business.
Oh yeah, bro. When I love that you get them to commit, and then I use it for our call center sales, right? Of bringing on new clients. We just use the same exact framework,
right?
And we get them to commit like, hey, by the end of the call, we're going to know if we're going to work with each other. This is what that looks like. Is that okay with you?
100%.
Yeah, that's good. Awesome. And then like we're already taking the next step forward, and then they know at the end of it, we're going to close.
100%.
It's not even a close.
Right. Exactly.
So what are the top 3 questions you're asking these people in the first 5 minutes, right? Because it's all question based, the Sandler sales system. Well, your sales system.
Exactly. So the first one for me is, so this depends, right? If I'm on the phone, the first one for me is, hey, so let's back up a little bit, because we got different marketing channels. But for me, the most important one is, may I share with you how we work, just to see if it makes sense for us to work together, right? And the reason I do that, that's a very important question, because every seller has a sales process, whether you believe this or not. They have their own sales process, whether that's their guard up high, whether that's, they've been trained that salespeople, or in general, anybody that's trying to do business with them, they've been trained that not to trust, right? Not to trust them. So now what I need to do is I need to figure out, how do I get the guard to go down? So that's one of the most important questions for me, is like, hey, before we even get into price, before I even talk to you about the property, do you mind if I share with you how we work? And then I make a statement, because I don't buy every single property from everyone that I speak with. I want to make sure that this makes sense for you and I as well. So that's the first question that I ask, right? Because I want to make sure because then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to establish the rules of the appointment. Like you said earlier, your cold callers are doing, hey, if at the end of this call, if it makes sense for us to work together, I'm going to have a home buyer specialist call you, or whoever. I'm going to have somebody call you to prepare an offer for you. Are you feel comfortable with that? Right? Yep. We want to say, hey, yeah, that's fair. We can do that if it makes sense. And then boom, boom, you go into your spiel. The second question I ask is like, once I establish the rules, which is a 6-step system, right? Which is, you appreciate why you're there. My other question is like, how are you hoping I can help? Right? Because now it's not me coming in, here's why I want to buy your house, Mr. Seller. No, how are you hoping that I can help? Because now that question for me, what it does is going to allow me to see where they're at as far as how much they know about this process, right? Because a lot of things can happen. They can say, well, I was hoping that you can tell us how you work, or, I was hoping, that you can pay me X amount of money. Right away with that question, you're going to get a really hard response, because, or you might get Lagarde, look, I don't know. How can you help me? Now you can say, okay, I'm dealing with someone that I think I'm going to have to educate a little bit more than others, right? And so now exactly. Now So those 2 questions, that question works really well. I love it. How are you hoping I can help? Another question too that I like to ask is, just out of curiosity, how come you're considering selling this property to an investor like myself, right? Or just out of curiosity, how come you're considering selling this property? Because we don't really use the word investor to a cash buyer like ourselves, or a company like us, right? So why don't
you use the word investor?
No, we don't use the word investor. It's just because it's real salesy, and one of the things that you got to stay away from, and I always tell people this, is there's no perfect script. There's no perfect way for you to do an appointment. But what you want to do is you want to create your scripts. You want to approach every appointment and minimize negative conversations and as much as objections as you can, right? That's the goal, man, is try to eliminate as much objections as you can. So every time that you say contract, investor, whatever buzzword that you use, you're going to have to come back for them at some point, because it's going to come up like, well, you're an investor like all the other people. Like, I know you're going to lowball me, right? No, contract means commitment. So we don't even use the word contract either. But going back to
what do you use?
So we'll use 2 things. We either say, do you feel comfortable putting everything in writing, or what is the other one? Agreement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Say paperwork.
Yeah. Paperwork works fine too as well. Yeah. Same thing. But the third question I like to ask as well is, this one's actually really good, confirming terms that's what we call it, confirming terms. And we'll say something like, hey, Strand, typically in the past, there's been 3 things that have stopped us from working together. And those 3 things are usually, one is time frame, the second one is money, and the third one is people. Out of those 3 things, is one of those 3 things that you can think of that would stop us from working together? Now, they're gonna if they eliminate, I want them to tell me which one of those 3 things so I can attack it. If they say all 3, then we got to work with all 3, right? If they say money, now we know we're not dealing with anybody else, and now we know the time frame is not an issue. It's all about the money now.
Man, I gotta go and watch this again. I'm writing down everything because you're just dropping so much, bro. Right? Well, you forget it, right? Because like I still study Sandler. I do sales calls every day, but then there's just the little tweak that the little thing can get you the deal or at least save you tons of time.
It's that slight edge. Exactly,
bro. It's that slight edge.
Yep.
So we got that. How are you training up your salespeople? Are you guys doing role plays every day? Like, what are you doing to give your people that slight edge?
Sure. So we have two trainings that we do Monday and Thursday. So it's a 1 hour long, 1 hour. We schedule it for about an hour, but usually it runs 45 minutes here or there, right? And in that training, what I like them to do is I want them to bring me all their challenges. What are they running into? So Monday, we have a newer guy with us. So one of the things that they brought up was, hey, when I talk to an investor, or when I talk to a real estate agent, because I feel like I don't know a lot, they stump me, right? So I asked them to bring all their situations and all their objections, where they're challenging from from the sales process, where in the sales process are they having challenges, and then we'll discuss that, right? So basically, our training is based around the challenges that they're having, not something that's template or, hey, let's just role play the script. They got to be real world challenges that they're having every single day on the phone. So that's 2 that we do in house. And then on Wednesday at 10:30, I think you've been on these. We have our sales training with students from all across the country, even overseas. Some bring their whole team on from the Philippines. They're cold callers. They all come to get on the call, and they get trained as well. So
they are the premier sales coaches for Collective Genius, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So we are. We've been that for I want to say now 3 months. No, longer than that actually. Never mind. I want to say more like 5 months now. So yes, we train probably. There's like 100 members, 100 and something members, and we probably train right now like 30 of the teams in there, and some of the 30s are like top players. So,
but it works, man. It works, and real estate doesn't really have a framework.
No
sales system. No one's out there teaching the sales system. Well, there's John and you guys, but really nobody else.
Right. Correct. Exactly. And it's like everything, one of the things I did a live yesterday, and we were talking about this offline. You got to figure out, you got that framework and that process, right? We talked a little bit about how they call boxing the sweet science, right? They call it the sweet science. So that's the same thing with sales. Like one of the things that you need to, and for your listeners, is you got to get training at some point, like raw ability, raw strength, this and that. Like it's going to get you deals. I'm not saying that it doesn't, because it works. Yep. But it's not going to create a repetitive system, right? A repetitive system, to be able to get you. How heck did I even do that? Right? You got to get it to be able to be repetitive, a process, a structure. So at some point you got to get training. And I'm not saying this just because we have a sales training program. I paid for training. I paid almost $20K for my sales training. So and that's what I'm saying. And you got to transition from that sales guy that's greedy, that was not greedy. What's that word?
Comes across as greedy.
Yeah. Coming across commission breath, raw ability. At some point, you got to raise up your skill and go from salesman to advisor.
Exactly.
And then close.
You're just talking, right? Well, at the point you're just talking, at the end of the conversation, they're like, oh yeah, let's do some business. So,
for example, that appointment on Monday, let's talk a little bit about that. I was talking to them and I'm like, look, honestly, can I share something with you guys? I always say that, right? I don't say, can I be frank? Can I be upfront? I always say, may I share something with you? And they're like, sure. Right now, what I'm seeing is you guys have a lot to figure out. Like, buying this house is the simple part. That's easy. I'm going to take my buyer's hat off and I'm going to advise you on some things that you need to do. I said, I'm not going to make you an offer. I'm not going to do any of that today. Here's what you guys have to do. And they were very happy about that. They're like, oh my gosh, she looked at her mom and she's like, we've never discussed these things. She's like, he's asking the right questions. I'm like, I don't know what to say, right? I'm just like, oh yeah.
What was the situation? Like, what were the questions that you asked them to like move them forward? Because people don't realize that it's not ever really about money.
Correct.
Like, you got to hash out all the nonsense.
Correct. So, I shared in the beginning about the situation with, they weren't on the same page as far as selling, which I thought. Then they said, yeah, we talked about it. We squashed it out, made them agree on that, right? Made them say like, hey, you guys got to figure out where you're at, because I'm not going to continue this appointment if you guys aren't on the same page. Second thing is, okay, so they told me that in order for them to sell the property, the mom needs to find a place to move to. So, okay, I said, I said, I shared a third party story right there. I said, that's not unusual. We've had situations in the past where we needed to help other sellers who have sold to us to find other places. But man, I said, how are you guys planning to figure this out? How are you guys planning to buy this next property? Are you going to use the cash of the sale, or are you going to get financed? And they're like, oh, we didn't think about that. Right. So they're like, I don't know. And like, and the other thing too is that, what is it that you want to buy? Because the way the prices are right now, the prices are pretty high. So, depending on what we agree upon on the sale of the property, you guys got to figure that out too. And they're like, man, I didn't think about this. And they started writing that down. They wrote down the first thing, are we on the same page as selling? Are we going to pay cash? Do we need to qualify? Then they brought out that they had, the credit maybe needed to be worked on. So they didn't have any of this established, right? They didn't have any of this written down. So, but again, some of this comes from, and let me back up here, Strand. Some of this comes from experience, right? Experience of being in the business for a while, and also doing the sales training for a while. But like I said earlier, at some point, you got to be strategic. You got to solve problems. That's what we're about, right? Is we're in the business of solving problems. Most real estate transactions, our avatar, our prospect is a prospect that needs a problem solved. That's really what it comes down to. And that's what you got to get good at. And if you can get good at asking strategic questions to be able to solve those problems, then you're going to be able to help a lot of people.
Do you feel like you wasted your time even going to that appointment? You could have asked better questions on the phone.
So no, because so we sent a postcard out. The daughter called me. She pretended to be the mom. So she was vetting. She was what's that word? Not vetting, but she was trying to figure out if we were legit or not. Mm-hmm. So they had 2 postcards. She went on the website, because we have our website on the postcard. Mm-hmm. She called the website number. She didn't call the postcard number. And then she acted like she was the mom. And usually I don't try to do too much on that first call. So I said, let me give you a call back. I got a price from her. And I also got what they owe on the mortgage on that one call, on the first call. I got her to tell me what they were trying to do. So I looked up the property, and it was a different name. And when I called her, I asked her, hey, before we get started on the second call, like I said, I was going to follow through. I just need to know something. She's like, what's going on? She's like, who's Cecilia? Right. That was the name of the mom. And she's like, like she started stuttering and backtracking. And she's like, that's my mom. And I'm like, oh, okay. So that's your mom. She's like, yeah. I never said I was her. And I'm like, look, it's okay. I said, it's just standard practice. Like, I need to know who your name is different from the person that's on title. So I never talked to the mom. Plus she spoke Spanish. The daughter spoke English and Spanish. So I had to go to the appointment regardless, right? To talk to the mom. There was no way to avoid it. Like, none of this was going to happen over the phone, bro, with the mom being older, speaking Spanish. That was one of the appointments where you just couldn't not do everything over the phone. Yeah.
That's hard. And what's going on, Manny? My boy.
What's up, Manny?
So how often are you going in person? And then how often are you doing it over the phone? And how does that system change for you? And like, how many steps do you have on the phone compared to in person?
Sure. So we've transitioned pretty hard, because we were heavy appointment. Remember last year and the year before that, like we were heavy going to every single appointment. And so, COVID changed that just a little bit. There were still people that would meet with you. And so I had to go back to my sales coach, right? Always learning, always trying to figure out how to pivot. And then probably in the middle of last year or towards the end of last year, we started transitioning like 80% on the phone, dude. So we just went hard locking stuff over the phone, including, when we had our biggest month over the phone was in December, locking up deals in New Mexico. And then that just kind of trickled, coming back to Phoenix in mid-January, early February. So most of the stuff that I've gotten has been over the phone. This has been the first appointment that I've been to since probably, dude, I don't even remember, bro, like 3 months maybe. Most of the stuff now has been over the phone, 100%.
Wow.
Now, so here's, everybody approaches different. Manny does it different. You guys probably do it different. I can probably say that I could lock something up on the first call, but that's not what I want to do. So my strategy is, I have a strategy behind it. Like, especially on postcards and PPC leads, I like to do 2 calls. So on the second call, I'm sure going to lock it up no matter what, right? Unless something new information comes out and there's no other else. But on the first call, what I like to do is, obviously I like to establish rapport, like to, establish the rules, go through some pain questions. And then what I like to do is figure out, what are they trying to accomplish, right? What's the goal of them selling this property? So what I mean by that is asking them, like, what's your next step when you sell this property? Like, what's going on in your world? I mean, get them to open up and tell me what's going on. So, and then what I do is I ask them, like, what I've been doing lately is I'm always asking them, like, I don't even give out offers. I just ask them, like, Strand, it sounds like a great property. I'm assuming it's already paid off. Right. No, it's not paid off. It's not paid off. I'm like, oh, okay. So ballpark, off the record, what do you think you owe? Oh, 100,000. Like, it comes out like nothing, right?
That off the record thing is the most awkward thing of all time.
But it works, right? It works. Like, I have not had one person say, like, what do you mean off the record?
Like, what do you mean off the record? What type of bullshit is this?
So, but I don't ask that until I figure out what the next steps are to close. I mean, after the close and after the sale, after they get their money. Because once they tell me, hey, I owe 100,000, and I say, okay, Strand, so we know that's got to be taken care of. We know we got to satisfy that 100,000. Do you mind if I ask you a question? Or I get that permission? Like, yeah, well, what's the question? So we know we got to do the 100,000. On top of that 100,000, what is that number that you would feel comfortable selling the property for to accomplish all the things that you told me earlier? And I'll just ballpark off the record. What is that number? Well, I mean, if I pay off the 100,000 and I get 80 on top of that, I think that would help me. And I'm like, $180,000? They're like, yeah, $180,000. So I'm looking at this, and I got a property that's worth, 280, 290. I never negotiate. I went away from negotiating from what the market value is. I don't negotiate from that. I negotiate from what is owed and what they're trying to accomplish. So then now I say, okay, so, I don't know if I can do that. Remember, we got to strip line them, because you can't get too excited. If you get more emotional than your prospect, you're dead, right? Because they're going to be like, is that too low, or what's going on? So I strip line and say, like, okay, well, I don't know if I can do the 180, but let's pretend I can. What would happen next?
Great.
That's kind of right? Create that commitment. Well, if you can do the 180 and, and you can pay me that, then I would sell to you, right? And so I lock them in. I lock them into that. And here's what I do next. Like, I know I got them locked in, and what I do is I can probably go to the close there if I wanted to, but I think my mindset is, like, the seller remorse is going to be a lot higher, locking them up. Like a lot higher. What's that?
If it's that fast, I feel like it's a lot higher. You got to make up. You're working for it, right? So that way they aren't.
Exactly. So this is what I tell them. Like, look, here's what I'm going to do. Let me talk to my partner. But I'm going to go talk to him, and if we're within that range, I'm not going to come back and beat, especially if it's like a fat deal. This is what I tell him. I'm not going to beat you up. I'm going to talk to him, but let's pretend he says yes. I get another commitment, because I want them to say yes at least twice. Right. If he says yes, what would happen next? Well, like I told you earlier, if you give me the 180 and you guys are good with that, I will sell to you guys. Now they feel committed, right? Verbally, they're giving us a commitment. And then I said, okay, so let me look at this. Let me do my homework because I'm not 100% sure yet. And then what I say, so if you were me, when can I call you? When can I call you so I can talk to you about this again? I don't try to go the next day. If the next day, if they try to,
It's like you're never gonna get a hold of them, bro.
I got to make that call that same day, and I do it, and I only go as far as 2 hours. That's it. I give them about an hour to 2 hours, just depend on if they're working or if they're not working. But I always call back that same day. But the next call, I already got them committed, and I'm gonna struggle a little bit when I do the next call, and then I lock them up on the next call.
Bro, I mean, so my next question was gonna be, how do you? I don't like getting off a call like with a PPC or a postcard because you may never get a hold of those motherfuckers again.
Yeah.
Right. When you take them that deep down the funnel, and we've talked about this, to where you take them down the funnel and like you do make them cry or they're embarrassed about what you talked about, they're gone forever. So like, what point do you know you have to close
do that on the phone. I try not to go that far deep in the pain funnel. So let's talk about this a little bit because that's a great point that you brought up. There's prospects that you're going to be able to know. You just know when it's time to pivot away from the pain funnel. Like there's no need to make them cry. Like they have enough pain. So one of the new things that we've been learning, right? And this is something that has been taught to us a long time ago, but we didn't talk about this enough, especially when you were attending like our programs. There's two types of motivation for us, right? There's pain motivation, right? Pain of why they need to sell the house. And then the second flip, the other side of that coin is gain motivation. What do they gain from selling the property? Because not a lot of people are in pain. Well, we think it's pain where they're suffering, where there's anger, where there's frustration, where there's like, I had one guy tell me, come on, Max, this house is a pimple in my butt. So, but there's people who have gain motivation. They might need to sell because they have another opportunity. They might need to sell because they got a better job. So that's gain motivation. So when you're talking to them and you're putting them through the process, I don't want to make everybody cry. That's not what I want to do. But I want to gather enough intel to say, okay, I think I have enough here. Let's move to confirming everything we talked about, and then move into talking about price, because that's the key, right? If you don't get enough information, if you don't get enough motivation. I was talking to my sales guy this morning. He's like, Max, can we talk about the property? I'm like, no, bro. Talking about the property is a filler. It's just a filler. At the end of the day,
right? It's for rapport. Like you use it to go open up another door.
That's a logical conversation. People don't buy logically; they buy emotionally. You're gonna have, no matter what, you're always gonna have to come back to find that motivation. So once you find that, then we never leave that step to talk about money until we find out if there's pain, or if there's pain of selling or gain of selling, those two things.
Well, and one thing I have to train my leads manager on, and our other leads managers, is about, you're walking down a hallway, a seller says something, and that door opens.
Yeah.
Right. And you got to go down that door. You can't miss those doors. Yeah. All the talking about the property is just to walk down the hallway and let those doors open for you.
That's it. It's a filler. I call it a filler. You call it a rapport. It's the same thing. Yeah.
Right. And so one thing I think is big with getting someone to relax is humor. How do you incorporate humor into your sales? So, because like some people just aren't funny, bro. Right? Like they just aren't good 100%. At making people laugh.
So you have to be careful of that, because you got to make sure that you do it in the proper scenario. Because if you inject humor in a bad scenario, it's gonna go bad. Like not everybody's gonna understand that. So I think injecting humor, honestly, to me, I don't know. You have to have it, bro. Like, because it has to be genuine. Like you can't just make a joke when someone's like telling you something serious about their life, right? Like I think you have to have it, and it comes with experience. But you do have to interject. You have to put humor behind you can't be serious the whole time, right? Usually for me, when I inject humor into the conversation, is it's like when they're hesitating maybe to answer, or you move them to the next step, things like that. But honestly, it's very hard to teach that. Like you can't really learn that. I think it comes with experience, and it comes with you got to have it. And there's because
it's a must.
Yeah, it's a must, 100%.
I try and just throw in something random at the beginning, right? Like you just get to know the person's personality and then say some off the wall shit maybe, or maybe you say something about like your tenants or your kid or your wife, like something that is relatable.
100%.
Right? Or it's like, oh, sorry, you may hear my little 3-year-old son running around tearing up our entire house, right? And it's a giggle, right? Because everybody has kids, everybody gets it, and I like making myself human, and I'm not just another dude over the phone
100%.
grabbing at money, right? I don't want to just be that guy over the phone grabbing at money. I try and this goes against a lot of other people's. I try and tell people a little bit of my background, so I'm not just some random guy, right? Like, no, this is me. This is what I do, and I want you to know who I am, even though they don't really care. But at least I'm not some guy over the phone and at the company, and it builds a little bit of that relationship.
100%, 100%. Yeah, you have to, bro. Like you gotta humanize the process, right? At some point, you know, it's not just black and white and cut and dry. Like you gotta humanize it.
So, on average, how long would you say your calls are? Right, to like where you feel satisfied. Obviously, every seller is different. Some people don't engage, but they do want to sell.
Yeah.
How long does it take? Like, is it like 40 minutes, 30 minutes?
So that's a good question. I think I really haven't averaged out, but I looked at a couple of my calls, like the real, like I'm talking about the ones where we build report, went through the whole process. I'm about 25 to 30 minutes. That's what my
second call or first one?
First call. The first call. Yeah. Second call is about the same. So just because here's the thing, like you gotta be able to move the sell forward. Like you just can't chit chat, bro. Like you can't just talk about the weather. You can't just, you know, my favorite color is blue, red. Like those things they have a place, but when you're a professional, and this is something that me and Adrian had talked about, you know, when we did our first live, like you got to be able to know your salesman personality should never leave you, but you should leave him in the car every now and then. Like you cannot pull him out every single scenario, but you need him. You need that salesman ego. So that way you can push the sale forward, but you got to do it strategically. Right. So my calls, bro, are, yeah, I add a little bit of humor. I add a little bit, you know, personal touch to it, but it's always about business and moving the sale forward, right? Because again, like we said earlier, do you want to know if you have somebody that you're going to do business with in the first 5 minutes or 45 minutes later down the call? So I want to know within the first 5 minutes. And I'm not pushing, I'm just asking questions, right? And that's what's going to help me to know. So usually I'm averaging about 25, 30 minutes on the first one. And then on the second call, typically it's about 20, 25 minutes again.
Okay. And let's talk about post-sale. And then I learned this from Tang with the cool down, right? And Tang Win out of Dallas.
Okay.
And I saw him post about it on Instagram. And he's like, yeah. So the cool down after the contract signed, don't be like, all right, thanks for signing the contract. I'm out. Peace. Like you want to at least like let it like talk to him a little bit and diffuse the situation, right?
You mean,
so you're not again
that, they get the DocuSign and then they send it to the title company and then they don't call the seller, they don't call the title company, they make the title company their transaction coordinator.
No, he's talking about just talking
That's a real thing,
dude.
by the way.
Oh, it is. It is. Right? Like it's just over. Like the title company talks to him. At that point, it's over with. I'm talking about as soon as it's signed, then you just let it kind of diffuse, right? And so you aren't hopping off the phone like, all right, thanks for the money. I'm out.
Right. No. Yeah. So we call it post sale. So to avoid seller's remorse. I've never heard that other term though. That's pretty cool. But the cool down, I never heard that term. But it's probably similar, right? So whether it's in person, whether it's on the phone, once they sign the agreement, you know, we obviously have a little talk. And then I'll just ask them a question. Like I would, if I'm in person, I'll just touch the contract and I'll say, hey, Stratton, you know, before I leave, I typically like to ask this question, right? And I ask everybody this when we come to an agreement on price and terms. What does this agreement mean to you? And so what I want them to tell me what that means to them is everything we talked about in the pain points. Whether it's, this means that I'm going to be able to pay off X medical bills. This means I'm going to be moving. It's going to allow me to move to another state. This means it's going to allow me to pay off. I don't want them to say this means I'm selling the house. Like, well, let me take that back. That's not really what I want for them to say, but they're going to say, eventually some people are going to say that. So when they tell me that, like if they say those other things, I'm like, okay, great. Sounds like we're on the same page then. But if they say, okay, that agreement means that I'm selling you the house. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Can I share with you what it means to me? And then once they say, yeah, well, of course. Okay, so that means to me, Stratton, that I'm helping you solve problem A, problem XYZ, and this is going to help you to be able to do the next steps that we talked about earlier. Did I get that right? Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, Stratton, this doesn't usually happen. I mean, I've had it happen maybe once or twice in the past. I leave here. Typically, some things will happen. You'll talk to your family, you'll talk to your pastor or anybody that you confide in and say you sold your property, and then they'll ask you how much you sold it for. A lot of times, you know what people are. They'll talk to you. I've had this happen in the past maybe once or 3 times, where I get a call and say, Max, I think I did the wrong thing. Stratton, do you think that this will happen between you and I at any point?
No.
And so, okay. And if it does, can you please give me a call and we can talk about it? I mean, I'm open to hear your discussion, right? But then there's other times when I've left, right? I've left the appointment, and then all of a sudden I get a call saying, hey, Max, I got offered, $1,500 more than what you're paying me. Let's pretend that happens, Stratton. What's going to happen next?
I don't know.
Should we talk about it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. And so how does that conversation go?
Yeah. So basically we're going to talk it out, and we're going to say, like, look, if that's going to happen, then we might as well cancel. Like, I'm not going to go open escrow. I'm not going to do that. And what we want them to say is like, look, I'm not going to take it. I want to work with you. We got this far with you, and we got to coach them up, bro. We call them coach them up because, like, if you leave, like you were saying earlier, right? Like, you get the contract, it's signed, you walk it out. You walk out like, yeah, money's in the bag. You don't do any of this. Like, they are not going to know what to tell those people that are going to come and talk in their ear, right? They're going to get enticed by people who are calling them, texting them. You think after they sign the contract, the text messages, the phone calls, and the postcards have stopped? They have not stopped, bro, and they're going to continue. And so it's your job as a professional to coach them up to make sure that when they get hit with those scenarios, that they're already prepared for them. Especially with the husband and wife, it works really well, even with anybody. But what we see with the husband and wife is, honey, I think we did the wrong thing. I think we need to call Max and cancel. Like, well, he told you, stupid, that you can cancel when he was here. Who's going to make that call?
And that's a real thing, though. Like, if you gave them the opportunity.
It is a real thing. Yep.
That question humanizes the transaction to a certain extent and highlights the solution to their pain. It's mental gymnastics is what I like to say.
Yeah, it's judo, bro. It's sales judo.
What's going on, JR?
JR, what's up, bro?
And I met JR at your guys' event.
Yeah, JR's a shooter, bro. I love JR.
So let's talk about objections, and anybody who's watching, throw your objections in the comment section. One thing that I honestly think kills a deal is if someone, a double one, was like, well, I want my attorney to read this over and I want to bring it to my agent. I'm like, well, I really don't think anything's going to happen here, sir. But how do you handle those objections? I never say no. Yeah, right. Go ahead.
So typically, you got to understand that type of prospect. It's typically a C personality, right? Analytical person, which is kind of like your engineers. Is a very small. They're very small that people that we deal with, but they do pop up every now and then because usually engineers and stuff, they have their stuff together. They're not selling to a wholesaler, but it happens, right? So what we tell them is we don't say no, like, because that's going to kill the deal. Anytime you're dealing with a C personality of people, somebody that's analytical, they're going to want to look at it. But here's the key. You need to let them, but you got to set commitments and you got to set expectations. Like, let's say I was talking to you, Strand, and you tell me that, I'm like, okay, so what we've done in the Strand, that's not a problem. I understand you want to look it over. Typically, I've had other, in the past, I had other homeowners that had, want to do the same thing. Usually I give them about 48 hours. Does that work fine for you?
Yes.
Right. So we'll give them a time frame and they'll stick to that time frame. Now, other thing that we've done as well, Stratton, because you say you want to talk to your attorney. Now, it depends on how experienced you are. I'm okay with getting on the phone with an attorney. You might be okay as well, Stratton. You can also set up a call and say, look, there's some stuff in my contract. I know I've dealt with attorneys. I would love to be in that meeting or on that call so we can, all talk about it. And sometimes you can do that if you feel pretty confident about it. Sometimes but most of the time they say, no, I just want to talk to the attorney myself. But what I would do is I would not put a price on the contract.
I did that
because there's been attorneys that actually I learned this yesterday with Steven, which is a great idea, by the way, because attorneys will sometimes get the deal, bro.
Redline it. Oh,
redline it. Exactly. So you don't put the price. And so if they call you and they say, hey, there's no price on here, look, it's kind of like when you sell to your buyer, right? You're the people you're assigning it to. They don't need to know what price. They just need to know what terms and languages in the contract that's beneficial to either the buyer or the seller that's selling it. So Going back to the question, you got to let them, say, hey, let's pretend it's been the 48 hours and you talk to the attorney. Obviously, if you don't feel comfortable about something, we know it's going to be either a no or we're going to talk about it. But let's pretend you talk to the attorney and everything looks good. What happens next? Right? We want to get that expectation because, we want to get that commitment. And what we want to do is we want to make sure when that next call, that 48 hours, we ain't talking about nothing but signing the contract. That's it. That's all I want to have that conversation about. Set that expectation. Like, look, it's okay. If you want to go talk to an attorney and you want to, we'll give you the 48 hours. That sounds like that's enough time for you. When I call you, what's the time is it right now? So it's 4:00 Phoenix. When I call you on Friday at 4:00 and your attorney says, hey, this paperwork's good, what's going to happen next, Stratton? Right? Now we want them to say, well, if he says it's good to go, man, I'm going to sell you the property. That's all I want to hear, right? Now, do me a favor. If for some reason I've had this happen before. People have questions on the agreement and they don't call me. Like, I'm easy to talk to, as you can see. If you do have any questions, would you promise me that you'll give me a call? That way we can talk it out. So you want to set that expectation as well. So just because you're going to talk to an attorney or realtor, whatever the case may be. Now, the only thing I would say there, sometimes what we do, well, I shouldn't say sometimes, anytime they bring up an attorney or a real estate agent, we switch up the contract and we'll use the Arizona realtor contract.
So they can't fucking redline it.
Yeah, so they can't redline it. Exactly.
Because that's what I've run into, that where they redline it, and obviously they're paying an attorney. The attorney wants to make them feel good, so they go through and try and strike.
That is so funny you said that. I had one attorney redline the Arizona contract once, and I told the seller, like, honestly, if this was my attorney, I would get my money back. And he's like, "What's that?" Okay, let me show you. Everything he redlined and he wrote was the exact same thing that was in that paragraph, bro. Right. All he did was change one or two words. And he's like, and he looked at it, he's like, that's incredible. I can't believe this. I'm like, I'm just telling you what I'm seeing.
And there's not been a time when I've had a seller send something to an attorney where I've not gotten a contract back with red lines.
Oh, of course.
Right. They're paying that. So don't be surprised when it happens. They're paying that. They are paying this person $500 to look over a piece of paper. That attorney better do something, or why did I just pay you $500 fucking dollars?
Exactly. That red line's worth $500. Right. Warner says a lot of attorneys are sharks. Exactly, bro.
Oh yeah, bro. I mean, they're smart dudes, right? They're businessmen. Like, some of them own some big firms.
Yeah, they do. But again, something I learned yesterday was awesome. Was don't put the price on the contract. All they care about is what terms are you giving them. That's it.
Yep.
They shouldn't care about the price. That's not their job to say, hey, this price is wrong. Their job is to say, okay, this language I think is kind of tricky. You may want to, he said red line's worth $1,500 in New York.
It's all them taxes up there, boss.
Woo! That sucks.
Well, I think they're an attorney state, though. That's the thing. They're an attorney state. So New York is an attorney state.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
100%.
it's a pain.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that realtor objection? Like if anybody says they're going to send it to the realtor, I'm like, well, my number one thing is like, well, what's stopping you from listing it with the realtor then? Why do you need a realtor involved?
Yeah, I mean, that one's kind of tricky, right? Like, because usually, again, I think I would go the route like trying to figure out what,
Why? The
yeah,
lack
why
of trust.
exactly? Why trust? Are you going and ask the questions, man? Like, don't leave it. Don't ask the questions like just out of curiosity. I mean, how come you want to talk to a real estate agent? Why not an attorney? Right? Like, what is the like? Are you and they say, well, because he's someone I trust. Okay, and then ask that question. Are you speaking with the real estate agent to figure out that the terms on the agreement are correct, or are you going to show them the price to see if they can list it for more? Call it out, dude. Like, call it out.
Oh,
Make
there
them
you go.
make them justify the reason why they're actually speaking with the real estate agent, right? Especially at that point, like
At
you
the
can
end.
ask questions. Yeah, towards the end, you could ask those questions. Are you speaking with the real estate agent because you want them to go through the terms with you and understand the language, or are you going to speak with them because it sounds like you want to compare my offer to what they can actually list it for on the market for? Because if that's the case, they're always going to win, and you might as well list it with them.
Right.
So then they're going to be like, no, like I already told you I don't want to list it. Or if they say yes, then like, okay, well, I'm not putting a price on the contract. I'm not giving you my offer. Yeah.
Exactly. And so let's and a way to not get surprised by this shit. Let's talk about setting up the terms at the beginning and asking them about like, well, is there anyone else who needs to be on this call? Right? I won't talk to people if there's another person involved.
Yeah, I mean, that one's really easy, right? Like, when the first, one of the questions is while we're going through the pain funnel is, hey, at this, hey, Trent, is there anybody else that's going to have an input? You can say input, veto. Is there anyone that's going to veto the deal? Is there anyone that can, that's going to challenge this? You don't ever want to say decision makers. That's the worst thing you can say. That's too salesy. That's and especially when you're talking to guys, and especially a deep personality. If you say decision, is there any other decision makers in the family? Exactly. See what Stratton is doing? No, I'm the decision maker. And then the guy ghosts you because the wife said no.
Exactly, bro. Everyone says they're decision maker.
Exactly. And that's easy to lie to. So I've taken it a step further. So I'll be like, hey, is there anybody else that's going to have an input on the sale of the property? Now, this could be your friend, this could be your brother, this could be a pastor, this could be someone that you confide in, that you in the past that you have made a big purchase with. Is there anybody else that we need to be talking to that's going to have an input? So I want to know right away, right? Well, there's going to be this person. Yeah, I do talk to my friend. Okay, perfect. That's not a problem. Just out of curiosity, when we do the next call or when we meet at the appointment, do you believe that maybe they can join us at that appointment? And invite them, and say, because the last thing I want to happen is I explain, we talk, you understand everything, and then you go and try to explain to them. I don't want anything to be lost. That's my concern. Yep.
100%. And if they ever say no, I always just say, well, I know if I sold something without telling my spouse, I'd be in the doghouse for a couple of weeks. Right? Like I call them out on it, because any married man who tells me they're going to sell a piece of property without consulting their spouse is lying to me.
100%.
Right? Like 100%. And so I at least want to double call it out to make sure, or whatever that situation is. And you guys can use if my dad tried to sell something that my mom knowing, I could see all hell breaking loose. And that's where I insert the humor too.
Yeah.
To somewhat call them out and have humor in there.
Yeah, and that's true. I love that you said that, because I would probably inject humor in there too. Like, come on, like, oh, you mean you're not like me then when I have to ask my wife for all that.
Right? Like, oh, your marriage must be pretty nice.
And sometimes that makes them comfortable, and they're like, yeah, I guess you're right. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So we got that. Let's start talking about you guys joining CG and how that's helped you guys so much. Well, and just being in more masterminds. I think you guys bringing in people consistently helps you out a lot too, that nobody really realizes.
Yeah,
because you got some heavy hitters in the mastermind of your own mastermind.
Yeah, exactly. So joining CG, obviously, Steve was trying to start his own mastermind. He shares a story. We were trying to figure out, starting our own mastermind. And so, Con, right? Con, you know who Con is. He's in that mastermind. And so he invited him. Then Ryan Pineda was like, hey, Steve, you got to come to this mastermind. He's like, nah. And then Ryan Harper, with Sharper Process, he was like, Steve, you got to come to this mastermind. So when Gary says something, you just got to listen, because Gary's the man on there and that stuff. So Steve went before I did. And so, but ever since then, man, it's been awesome. So this was my first time going. Steve has went 3 times already. And honestly, it's I was sharing with you a little bit offline some of the things, but going to a mastermind, especially, and this is any mastermind, it doesn't have to necessarily be Collective Genius, right? Because Collective Genius is, real high level profile people that you obviously want to be around at some point, because one idea can change your business tremendously from night to day, right? But the idea of going to masterminds is that, right? Is you're masterminding with other people who own businesses, other people who are maybe more experienced than you. They're in a higher level than you, somewhere where you want to be at. And one of the things that I always do, man, I don't know anything when I go to these masterminds. Like, I'm like clueless of I don't speak unless I'm spoken to. I just absorb, bro. Right? So I learned a lot, and that's the way you got to approach it, right? Is, when I actually posted this today, is that, 3 reasons to go to a mastermind is, one, you're going to learn new things from people who are ahead of you, who are much higher level, that could potentially change your business forever. And the second thing is that you build those high level relationships, man. I've had people on Facebook for a while, but I never really met them in person. And, we exchange phone numbers, right? High level people are like, hey, awesome. Exchange cell phone numbers, because we were able to provide value, and, they provide value to us. And then the last thing is that it makes yourself a lot. I want to say it's self-development as well. So it helps you grow personally as well too, because you realize like, whoa, I'm not where I thought I was, and my potential is a lot higher. So it challenged you personally as well too. That's kind of the big thing that I took away, right? Even though we've done some really big stuff up to now with what we have done, right? In the 3 years that Steve and I have been partnered up, which is crazy. Like, it blows me away, 3 years only. And it was actually 3 years this month. Wow. But, being like, being around that just challenges you, like, man, it helps you to level up. But I recommend, if you ever get invited to a mastermind, and as you grow, some of these masterminds charge, let's be honest, right? I'm not going to sit here and say they're free. Oh, but eventually,
none of them are free. None of them are free.
Yeah, exactly. None of them are free. So, I always laugh, because people think that it's hard when you get started, which it is. I'm not saying it's not. But as you grow and your business grows, it gets even harder, bro. Like, this, right?
It's way different. Like, you think you have problems at the beginning, to where that shit's basic. then you start running some other, like, even like, you run into human capital issues.
So the way I kind of said, I learned this, an example, like, so when you're first starting out, bro, you're going through the wooden doors, like right? You're able to kick them down. They're a little tough. And then you level up to, like, the plexiglass or whatever, right? But as you get higher and higher the levels, then the doors become steel.
Oh yeah.
Yep. And they're not just about just kicking them down. You got to have the right key. You got to have the right puzzle, whatever it is that you want to, call it. And the way you break through those doors is exactly what we're talking about. Going to these masterminds that eventually you're going to have to, pay for. That's not going to be free.
Well, and you're not going to figure it out on your own too, right? Like, you can only think so much in the day, and someone else is doing it. You see them somewhere. They may be a guru, but at a point in time, they've done it, right? Or they're still actively doing it.
100%.
You paying 20 grand, 30 grand, 50 grand to be there, just to ask that one question is going to make you multiples over.
100%. And that's what I was going to say. The other thing too is that there's a lot of guys that you'll never see on Instagram, that you'll never see on Facebook. You have to remember this, in those masterminds, that are doing way, way, way higher things that you could even imagine, that the brain can even grasp. And you're like, holy smokes! Like, imagine being in that. That's even worth the price of admission, because what's crazy about that, those guys are actually genuine, and they'll talk to you, not, and because you're generally want to know, like, you know, you're asking questions and you're a student, right? You got to learn from those guys. You got to be a student when you're in those rooms. And that's one of the things that a lot of people don't get. Like, oh, I see these guys on Instagram. Like, there's people in those masterminds that are not on Instagram, that are not on Facebook, that are actually going to blow your mind when you go to these masterminds.
Right. Well, and their ego's not as much, right? Because they're not a celebrity. The social
Exactly.
media dudes won't, like, oh, well, I can't give you the time of day.
Yeah,
Where
yeah.
you go talk to like a 65-year-old dude who's doing way more, has accomplished way more.
Yeah.
And you just sit there and talk to him for an hour.
Yep.
And he's just like, yeah, I'll pass it down.
100%.
It's a lot different. And that value carries over with you for your life. Like, a mastermind's not a one-time.
No.
You just get it for that mastermind. All those connections that come from it, the phone calls that I can make now. Like, bro, this has happened. What do I do?
Yeah, no, exactly. The new, like I said earlier, the new contacts, you know, that I've added to my phone. It's amazing, bro. But this one mastermind is like the highest level that we've been involved with, right? Like, how much we also, you know, from paying from the entry fee, the, you know, business that you got to do. It's insane, right? And what got us in the door was, you know, our sales training. That was one of the big things that got us in the door. But like I said, it's been a game changer for us. Just going there. And it's not just when I went, but when Steve started going, you know, we started implementing strategies from some of these guys that are doing, you know, a lot of business. I mean, at a high level. But that's really it. It opens up doors that you would, like you said, we would never thought about a lot of this stuff on our own. There's no way you could do that.
The first event that like blew my mind is when I went to Rafael Vargas's event.
Yeah, I heard that. I've heard that.
But like, it was corporate. I was like, what in God's name? Like, this is what you can do with this? Like, I had no clue. I was like, this is what I can turn this into. And then like, I meet Nick, I meet a bunch of other people in there who are doing high multiples of 7 figures.
Yeah.
I was like, oh wow, like, this is what I can turn this into. And it just opens up your mind.
Right.
That's the biggest thing.
100%.
What mastermind groups do you recommend? I love at least Steve and Max's coaching for where you're at, James, is amazing. Do you guys still have those group calls?
We do. Yeah, we do.
It's amazing. Like, and there's heavy ass hitters in there. My boy Gino's in there. Gino's absolutely killing it.
Thomas from out of Houston's in there.
Stan's still in there.
Stan, Warner, he's on here.
Yeah, Warner is.
Yep. I mean, we got quite a bit of people on there inside that mastermind. And
I pulled so much value out of that. And again, the connections, right? To where now me and Gino do business together. I've done stuff with JR. That you get so much, and like, this isn't a knock at you guys, but you only get so much from the people who lead the mastermind. Again, you get it all from the people around it.
And that's one of the things we even say that, like, on the first day, like, you know, most of your, you know, we talk about the different learning styles, right? Which is learning from us. But the biggest thing is that learn from each other and then make that contact, right, from each other. So that way that relationship stays and it keeps going.
Hell yeah. So before we're getting close to an hour, man.
I know, it's crazy, dude.
Give me 4 sales tips. Bro.
No, nothing, bro.
Talking about not a damn thing. Give me 4 sales tips that will generate more revenue in your business. And like, it could be 4 phrases.
Yeah,
right? Because at this point it's questions, like 4 questions that are going to, you say this in this situation, something will go different. And these are the common mistakes that you see.
Sure. So I'll go back to my first 2 questions. So you got 2 there. I would say, you know, before you start the meeting, set up expectations. So you want to ask, the question is, hey, before we get started, may I share with you how these calls typically go? Or if you're at an appointment, before we get started, may I share with you, you know, how we work, just to see if it makes sense for us to, you know, keep talking or for us to work together. That's a really important one, man, because like, you're going to establish the rules for your appointment, and then you can go into whatever the outcome of the appointment you want, right? Like your cold callers, you want them to, you know, be transferred or whatever the case may be. Us, we either want the appointment or put things in writing. That's our outcome on our calls. And so whatever your outcome is out of that call, out of the appointment, if it's signing an agreement, if it's a follow-up call, if it's them sending you pictures, if it's, you know, going out to the property, whatever that outcome is, by asking that question, you can set those expectations. And the next one is the other one, right? Like, you know, once you set those expectations, so the other question is, Stratton, how are you hoping I can help? Because now they're going to open up, right? They're going to open up, they're going to build rapport, and they're going to be like, well, I was hoping. You're going to get, honestly, you're going to get more truth than not when you ask that question. So they're either going to come at you really hard. Well, I was hoping you give me 100,000. Well, I was hoping you would pay the most. Well, I was hoping you make me an offer today, right? And you want to know that like ASAP. So that question is going to what do you call it? Help you with that. So, and then the third one is confirm. Like I was talking earlier, saying like, you know, confirming everything you talked about, and then asking the question. You know, in the past, you know, typically there's three things that has stopped me from working with other sellers. And then you ask that question. Usually the first one is time frame. The second one is money. And then the third one is other people. Stratton, out of those three, which one do you think that would stop us from working together? Because now you know which way to take this, right? Is it a time frame issue? Is it do we have to talk to other people? Or is it going to be all about the money? If it's all about the money, then you're going to get into now negotiating, right? You're going to get into negotiating. And then my favorite, this is my absolute favorite, I'm going to let this out, bro, is when you close the deal. This is a three-stage question, right? This is my closing. You know, everybody has different styles of closing, but this is mine. You know, hey, Stratton, given everything we've talked about in this whole appointment, you know, you feel comfortable with the price. You know, do you feel like I understand your situation? I want them to say yes, because that means that they have, you know, they pretty much have, they've participated with me. They know what we've talked about. And then the next question is going to be, you know, since you feel like I understand your situation, would you like my help? Right. And if they say yeah, and then, you know, the next question is for me, hey, only if you're comfortable, I can help you. And I want them to say yes again. Remember going back, saying yes twice. And then the last question on that part is, what should we do next? I want them to tell me, like, do you have the contract, or what do we do next? So I would say those questions right there is going to make you a lot more money, because it's going to allow you to understand your prospect better. It's going to get you to find out what really is going to be the main obstacle, and then at the end, how to close the deal. Yep.
Straight bombs.
Yes, sir. Thank you,
so
bro.
Where can people find out more about you? Where can they find more about your sales training?
Sure. So you can go to real simple, disruptors.com, or you can follow me on Instagram at real Max Jimenez. On there, you see my, you know my profile. I drop daily content, this type of content that we talked about today. But you can go to the website, disruptors.com, or follow me on, I'm more active on Instagram than Facebook, at real Max Jimenez. So just add a real in front of the name that you see there on the screen.
Thank you guys so much for coming on. And these sales techniques aren't just for real estate either. You just place in your widget, man. Place in your widget and you're going to kill it.
Exactly. Cool, bro. Appreciate it. This was awesome.
Of course. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you again, Max, for coming on. Everybody have a great day.
Yes, sir.